boys. No need to trouble the police. And it won't even run down your battery.
Magnavolt. Lethal response.
Hello, it's the Stupid Monkey Philosophy channel. Doing a pre-game warm-up here. Still waking up. I haven't even opened my coffee yet. Here I am trying to get out a book. But I just figured I'd go live over here because I'm up early and just watching Nitty's premiere. It was kind of a premiere, just like a clip of some kind. Anyway, that's going on. And I was talking about doing a philosophy video. I did a Dear Diary video last night for Facebook and Twitch viewers. And I was like, yeah, I'll just do this stupid philosophy thing while I wake up and get my bearings. And then we'll do the normal Sunday show at 9 a.m. over the Trustgate podcast since I'm up and about on time, assuming the internet doesn't give us any grief. That's good. Can't see it with my background. I was gonna do the guided meditations, but I don't know if this is the time and place. And I was gonna do the bus stop philosophy, but I don't know if it's the time and place for that either. So the other idea I had was reading this guy Plato in his book Republic. I bought this one a couple months ago. It's taken me a while to get around to reading it, and as I have been reading it, I've been doing so very slowly. It's kind of an interesting read. The way Plato writes is it's different. He doesn't use quotation marks in his narratives, so that you gotta really pay attention to keep track of who's saying what to whom sometimes. Because they'll just have dialogues and back and forth, so they don't really specify who's saying the thing being said, and what are you going to do about that? You just got to figure it out, because it is, I mean, once you start getting used to reading it makes sense. You just have to get used to the literary styles of Plato, who I don't know if it's known to be true, or this guy Aristotle, who he writes about as supposedly his teacher, may or may not have actually existed. He may be a character that Plato actually makes up to describe, it's like the objective sense of things that he maybe experienced, or maybe they were just thought experiments. We don't really know whether a lot of this shit even really happened. He keeps telling stories as if they did happen, or somebody told him that it happened, or maybe he's just saying that and he's just really making shit up because it was just a thought experiment. I don't know. They may or may not mention real people in the book. It's all very confusing, and to think that conversations really went down this way, especially amongst more primitive and impatient apes, it plants the seed of doubt in my mind, but that doesn't mean it ain't so, right? So I don't know, maybe we could look up the historicities there, and history, I guess, oh, no, wait. So he was the student of Socrates and taught Aristotle and founded the academy. Okay, so I had that backwards. He's supposed to be the student of Socrates, who may or may not have existed. But okay, so Aristotle, who's the subject of this book, Republic, the dialogues are... Oh, no. Damn it, see, I'm all over the place now. Okay, so that's right. This one, maybe, did it move on in the second one? 'Cause this one was, the first one is with Socrates. It's a series of dialogues with these, I don't know. Doesn't seem to be, like, in the beginning it almost seems like he doesn't even really want to talk to these guys, and then they kind of like, yeah, you kind of have to, and... Why was I thinking of Aristotle, though? Maybe it just got it transposed in my head. Because, yeah, these... Okay, so this is Socrates. It's supposed to have been Socrates having the conversation, so I got that one wrong. And Socrates... Right, we'll look at... Was Socrates a real person? There we go. And there's a bust on him, I guess. At least no modern scholars really question the fact that he existed. Socrates was a very well-known figure in Athens during his own lifetime. Oh, and his execution in 399 BC. Okay, so I don't know where I got the idea that Socrates may not have existed, or... Yeah, there's a bunch of contemporary accounts. So, I don't know why the seed of doubt was planted in my mind, but, you know, somebody once said, oh. So this is what we're doing, until we start the podcast in about a little bit here. So we'll start back from the beginning, because as I said, I've been reading this book very slowly to be thorough, to try to understand the conversations. So I'm now at what's, well, these are broken up into books, like the Bible is, they're individual books, yeah, whatever, they're all chapters of the one book. I'm in book 3, I've just gotten there, about 79 pages in. We're starting back from book 1. And I'll kind of describe the scene that I was talking about. They're at like a fair or some type of public gathering, and they're approached by some dudes, and I'm probably going to mispronounce these names horribly, and they end up going home with these dudes, somewhat reluctantly, it appears. Alright, begin. I went down yesterday to the Piraeus with Glaucon, the son of Ariston, that I might offer up my prayers to the goddess Bendis, the Thracian Artemis, and also because I wanted to see in what manner they would celebrate the festival, which was a new thing. I was delighted with the procession of the inhabitants, but that of the Thracians was equally, if not more, beautiful. When we had finished our prayers and viewed the spectacle, we turned in the direction of the city, and at that instant Polemarchus, the son of Cephalus, chanced to catch sight of us from a distance as we were starting on our way home, and told his servant to run and bid us wait for him. The servant took hold of me by the cloak behind, and said, Polemarchus desires you to wait. I turned around and asked him where his master was. There he is, said the youth, coming after you, if you will only wait. Certainly we will, said Glaucon. And in a few minutes Polemarchus appeared. Polemarchus, I don't know. And with him Adeimantus, Glaucon's brother, Niceratus, the son of Nicias, and several others who had been at the procession. Polemarchus said to me, I perceive, Socrates, that you and your companion are already on your way to the city. You are not far wrong, I said. But do you see, he rejoined, how many we are? Of course. And are you stronger than all these? It does not sound like he's threatening them. For if not, you will have to remain where you are. You'll go into the city over our dead bodies. That's what it sounds like to me. May there not be an alternative, I said, that we may persuade you to let us go. May there not be the alternative that we may persuade you to let us go. And back to this other guy. But can you persuade us if we refuse to listen to you? He said. Certainly not, replied Glaucon. Then we are not going to listen. Of that you may be assured. Adeimantus added, has no one told you of the torch race on horseback in honor of the goddess, which will take place in the evening? With horses, I replied. That is a novelty. Will horsemen carry torches and pass them one to another during the race? Yes, said Polemarchus. I feel like Polemarchus is how I'm supposed to be. Polemarchus? I don't know. And not only so, but a festival will be celebrated at night, which you certainly ought to see. Let us rise soon after supper and see this festival. There will be a gathering of young men, and we will have a good talk. Stay then, and do not be perverse. Glaucon said, I suppose, since you insist, that we must. Very good, I replied. Accordingly, we went with Polemarchus to his house, and there we found his brothers, Lysias and Euthydemus, and with them Thrasymachus and Thrasymachus the Chalcedonian. I got that wrong. I thought he was another dude. Thrasymachus is the Chalcedonian. Charmantides the Pinean, and Cleitophon, the son of Aristomenes. Oh, thank God. I don't have to say all these names too much. They're going to, it's going to be more. Anyway, there's going to be a conversation between these people and this Thrasymachus guy. He's going to be a real pain in the ass. But anyway. Here, continue. There too was Cephalus, the father of Polemarchus, whom I had not seen for a long time, and I thought him very much aged. He was seated on a cushioned chair, and had a garland on his head, for he had been sacrificing in the court. And there were some other chairs in the room, arranged in a semicircle, upon which we sat down by him. He saluted me eagerly, and then he said, I don't know, we may just skip this little, it's a novel little conversation between Socrates and the old man here, but I don't know if it's really something we need to, I'd rather just get on to the main portion of the conversation, I think, if that's perfectly alright. And since it is my show, I guess I'll just do what I want. On the side note, I do have other projects to work on, and since I happen to have the day off, I figured I'd just spend some time doing this, spend some time on the self-care and grooming I need to do, and clean it up around here. And yeah, that's right. So yeah, it's kind of just gonna be a lazy day, not putting too much pressure on myself, and yeah. Yeah, it goes on a couple pages of him chatting with the dad, and okay. So at some point the sons come back over and interrupt the conversation between Socrates and the old man, the man of the house, right? Encephalus. And then they begin into this extended conversation, which is the nature of justice that really kind of drives the narrative beginning here. And so we continue with Socrates. Questioning. Tell me then, O heir of the argument, what did Simonides, I call him Simonides, his name's Simon. Tell me then, O thou heir of the argument, what did Simon say, and according to you truly say, about justice? He said that the repayment of a debt is just, and in saying so, he appears to me to be right. This is page 8 by my version, which is a Collins classic. He said that the repayment of a debt is just, and in saying so, he appears to me to be right. And this is where it gets kind of confusing. This is Socrates going back into the question. I should be sorry to doubt the word of such a wise and inspired man, but his meaning, though probably clear to you, is the reverse of clear to me, for he certainly does not mean, as we were just now saying, that I ought to return a deposit of arms, or of anything else to one who asks for it, when he is not in his right senses, and yet a deposit cannot be denied to be a debt. And this man answers in the affirmative, but, so this is Polemarchus who's talking to now, the son of Cephalus, who he had been talking to in the beginning. This is the guy who stopped him initially, and told him he was going to come have this conversation, like whether he liked it or not, right? I should be sorry to doubt the word of such a wise and inspired man, right? So he's being a little bit snarky here, but he's like, no, this guy, let's just think this guy's a very smart guy. If he said so, yeah, okay. But his meaning is not clear to me. It seems clear to you, but it's not clear to me that the repayment of a debt is just. That is the nature of justice, right? Because they've made this argument that if your friend leaves his sword with you, his arms, whatever, his battle axe, whatever they were using back in the day. If your friend, let's just say modernize it. If your friend leaves his gun with you, and he comes over and he's all sketched out. He's like, I don't know, man. I really want to kill my wife. She's, cheating on me with this guy. Give me my gun. Dude's probably not in his right senses. You're not going to give him his gun, and you'll be like, nah, you need to go chill the fuck out. I'm not giving you this thing right now, because you're probably going to do something bad, right? He's like, hey, he just comes up to you in a normal state of affairs, and he's like, hey, man, I want my gun. Well, then, yeah, give him his fucking gun back. It's his shit, right? But if you know he's probably going to do something bad with it, or if you have even the inkling he's going to do something bad with it, you've been holding it for him, you probably wouldn't give it back to him, and that would be the just thing to do, right? So he's saying that just because you're holding this thing for this person, merely giving it back to them like you promised to isn't always the best thing to do. It's not the just thing to do, because it could be the fact that you're giving it back to them and they're going to do something bad with it, right? So don't give it to them. Or, the same thing, the ethical drug dealer, if he knows that his client is about to go off the deep end or fucking possibly unalive themselves, you might, ignore that phone call for a couple days, hope that they dry out. Obviously, you're going to get your drugs where you're going to get them, but, the ethical drug dealer would be like, no, man, you need to take a little time off. I enjoy your business. I appreciate your business. I appreciate your business. The ethical drug dealer. Okay. And so this Polemarchus answers in the affirmative. True. And Socrates continues, then when the person who asked me is not in his right mind, I am by no means to make the return. Certainly not. When Simon said that the repayment of a debt was justice, he did not mean to include that case. Certainly not, for he thinks that a friend ought always to do good to a friend and never evil. So when they got into the conversation, they got into the nature of whether justice was good and injustice was evil, and that a friend would do good with a friend and a foe would not. So they're going to go into that a little bit more now. So we're going to get into the nature of friends and foes, good and evil, justice and injustice, and how these concepts are interrelated. He thinks that a friend ought always to do good to a friend and never evil. You mean that the return of a deposit of gold, which is to the injury of the receiver, if the two parties are friends, is not the repayment of a debt. That is what you would imagine him to say. Yes. And are enemies also to receive what we owe to them? To be sure, he said. They are to receive what we owe them, and an enemy, as I take it, owes to an enemy that which is due to or proper to him, that is to say, evil. Ah, the plot thickens. Simonides, then, after the manner of poets, would seem to have spoken darkly of the nature of justice, for he really meant to say that justice is the giving to each man what is proper to him, and this he termed a debt. That must have been his meaning, he said. By heaven, I replied, and if we asked him, what due or proper thing is given by medicine, and to whom, what answer do you think that he would make to us? He would surely reply that medicine gives drugs and meat and drink to human bodies. This is a weird medicine. I mean, the drugs, yeah, but apparently... he would surely reply that medicine gives drugs and meat and drink to human bodies. And what due or proper thing is given by cookery, and to what? Seasoning to food. And what is that which justice gives, and to whom? What is that which justice gives, and to whom? If, Socrates, we are to be guided at all by the analogy of the preceding instances, then justice is the art which gives good to friends and evil to enemies. Justice is the art which gives good to friends and evil to enemies. Okay. That is his meaning, then. I think so. And who is best able to do good to his friends and evil to his enemies in time of sickness? The physician. Or when they are on a voyage amidst the perils of the sea? The pilot. And in what sort of actions, or with a view to what result, is the just man most able to do harm to his enemy and good to his friend? In going to war against the one, and in making alliances with the other. But when a man is well, my dear Polemarchus, there is no need of a physician. No. And he who is not on a voyage has no need of a pilot. No. Then in time of peace, justice will be of no use. I am very far from thinking so. You think that justice may be of use in peace as well as in war? Yes. Like husbandry for the acquisition of corn. Yes. Or like shoemaking for the acquisition of shoes. That is what you mean. Yes. And what similar use or power of acquisition has justice in time of peace? Excuse me. And what similar use or power of acquisition has justice in time of peace? In contracts, Socrates, justice is of use. And by contracts, you mean partnerships. Exactly. But is the just man or the skillful player a more useful and better partner at a game of draughts? The skillful player. And in the laying of bricks and stones, is the just man a more useful or better partner than the builder? Quite the reverse. Then in what sort of partnership is the just man a better partner than the harp player? As in playing the harp player is certainly a better partner than the just man. In a money partnership. Yes, Polemarchus, but surely not in the use of money, for you do not want a just man to be your counselor in the purchase or sale of a horse. A man who is knowing about horses would be better for that, would he not? Certainly. And when you want to buy a ship, the shipwright or the pilot would be better. True. Then what is that joint use of silver or gold in which the just man is to be preferred? When you want a deposit to be kept safely, a banker. You mean when money is not wanted but allowed to lie? Precisely. That is to say, justice is useful when money is useless. Justice is useful when money is useless. That is the inference. And when you want to keep a pruning hook safe, then justice is useful to the individual and to the state, but when you want to use it, then the art of the vine dresser. Clearly. And when you want to keep a shield or lyre and not to use them, you would say that justice is useful, but when you want to use them, then the art of the soldier or of the musician. Certainly. And so of all other things, justice is useful when they are useless, and useless when they are useful. That is the inference. Then justice is not good for much. But let us consider this further point. Is not he who can best strike a blow in a boxing match or in any kind of fighting best able to ward off a blow? Certainly. And he who is most skillful in preventing or escaping from a disease is best able to create one. True. And he is the best guard of a camp who is best able to steal a march upon the enemy. Certainly. Then he who is a good keeper of anything is also a good thief. That, I suppose, is to be inferred. Then if the just man is good at keeping money, he is good at stealing it. That is implied in the argument. Then, after all, the just man has turned out to be a thief. And this is a lesson which I suspect you must have learned out of Homer, for he, speaking of Autolycus, the maternal grandfather of Odysseus, who is a favorite of his, affirms that, quote, he was excellent above all men in theft and perjury, end quote. And so you and Homer and Simonides are agreed that justice is an art of theft, to be practiced, however, for the good of friends and for the harm of enemies. That was what you were saying. No, certainly not. Certainly not that. Though I do not now know what I did say, but I still stand by the latter words. Well, there is another question. By friends and enemies, do we mean those who are so really, or only in their seeming? So earlier they had spoken how people could appear to be friends, but actually be enemies, right? Surely, he said, a man may be expected to love those whom he thinks good, and to hate those whom he thinks evil. Yes, but do not persons often err about good and evil? Many who are not good seem to be so, and conversely? That is true. Then to them the good will be enemies, and the evil will be their friends, true? And in the case that they will be right in doing good to the evil, and the evil to the good, clearly. But the good are just, and would not do an injustice. True. Then according to your arguments, it is just to injure those who do no wrong. Nay, Socrates, the doctrine is immoral. Then I suppose that we ought to do good to the just and harm to the unjust. I like that better. But see the consequence. Many a man who is ignorant of human nature has friends who are bad friends, and in that case he ought to do harm to them. and he has good enemies whom he ought to benefit. But, if so, we shall be saying the very opposite of that which we affirm to be the meaning of Simonides. Very true, he said, and I think that we had better correct an error into which we seem to have fallen in the use of the word friend and enemy. What was the error, Lemachus? I asked. And there I think we'll leave it at page 12 for now. Go a few more minutes and then transfer over to the Trusty 8 podcast, where we're doing podcasts. The Trusty 8 podcast. With a very special and me coughing. Oh, yep, there's Atheist Experience has a 24/7 live stream going on, which I think is incredible. I got to see some old Matt Dillahunty and Jen Peoples videos last night while I was driving home. I was like, wow, man, that shit's like probably even before my time. Not I was born, but I just wasn't around, the AXP scene until much more recently. But they've been doing that shit for a long time. What was it? Oh yeah, that's right. It's called how long is this video? And you know how long the video is. We get. Oh my god. That's an ad. That's not related. Okay, we'll try to go with this one, I guess. I don't think we'll make it through the whole video though.
Recordings just got better.
Oh, cool.
What is the relationship between logic and reality? Does logic represent or describe reality? This is a question that Olga Cooperman asked me over on Ko-Fi. They ask, my question is, does logic represent the structure of reality? If you'd like me to do a video answering your question, go and take a look at my Ko-Fi page, but we're going to get on with answering Olga's question right now. Okay, so does logic represent the structure of reality? What exactly might that mean? Well, here's one thing it could mean. We can look at the idea of logical atomism. So this is an idea that comes from the philosophers Bertrand Russell and Ludwig Wittgenstein. In the early parts of the 20th century, you can see these ideas in Russell's The Philosophy of Logical Atomism, but also in Wittgenstein's first book, the Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus. This is the really difficult work of philosophy that he wrote whilst he was a prisoner of war. He was in prisoner of war camp during the First World War. So what is the idea of logical atomism? Well, basically, it's the idea that we can understand the structure of the world in analogy to the structure of logic. So let me give you a little bit of background to this idea, just so we can understand what it was responding to. Late in the 19th century and the early 20th century, idealism, British idealism, but influenced by German idealism, was kind of the dominant philosophy. And one of the things it held was an idea of holism or monism, the idea that the world can only be understood as a whole. You can't really understand the parts parts of the world unless you understand the world as a whole. Russell and Wittgenstein were reacting to that. They're saying, look, we can break the world down logically through logical analysis into its constituent parts and understand those. So what's this got to do with logic? Well, here's the idea, right? In logic, in, say, propositional logic, we build up sentences from atoms, the P's, Q's and R's, okay? We build up sentences from these using the connectives and, or, not, if then, if and only if. So given any logical sentence, however complex it might be, we can always break it down to its atoms. And given the way that they are, not, if then, etc., we can understand what the whole sentence means in terms of that combination of the atoms. Russell's and Wittgenstein's idea was basically that we can understand the world in kind of the same way or an analogous way, okay? Through logical analysis, we can break down the facts in the world, which are kind of ultimately going to be like logical sentences. We can analyze them into their constituent parts, the atoms, the logical atoms, and through understanding those, we can understand the whole. So there's some really nice ideas in there. The idea that we can understand the world, like in its parts, without first understanding the whole. You know, that idealist notion, I think it's very difficult because we're never going to understand the world in its entirety, in its whole, but we do want to try to understand the parts of it. So I think that's a real good point of this theory. But for me, you know, it's not really going to work because when we break down a logical sentence into its atoms, they might be things like, you know, it's raining right now, okay? Logically simple, but not really metaphysically basic, okay? We wouldn't want to say that it's raining, that's a metaphysically basic fact, a metaphysical atom, because it depends on loads of other stuff, right? In order for it to be a fact that it's raining right now, we need the existence of water and all the chemistry that that's based on. We need weather systems and clouds. You know, if there was water falling from the sky, that doesn't make it rain. It has to be part of a weather system coming out of the clouds, etc., etc. So there's a lot more going on to understanding what's the metaphysical building blocks of reality than just logical analysis. And, you know, if you're asking for my view, I would say that we want to understand the metaphysical building blocks both through doing metaphysics and also by looking at what fundamental science says. So in some ways, logic doesn't have that much to do with that, other than in the kind of obvious sense of checking whether we've got good, logically coherent arguments or not. Okay, so I'm not going to say that logic represents the structure of reality in the same way that logical atomists would have said. But there's another way that you might think that logic represents the structure of reality. I think it represents something like the way that truth works in reality. Now, this is a kind of a tricky issue because logic isn't just representing the way that truth works. It's not just that in a logical argument, if the premises are true, the conclusions are true. There's a kind of necessity in there, right? If the premises are true, then it must be that the conclusion's true. Or kind of more precisely, necessarily, if the premises, then the conclusion. So there's a kind of necessity that's baked into logic. Where does that come from? Is it found in reality itself? Well, I mean, kind of depends what you mean by reality. We certainly don't find it in the physical, spatio-temporal world. Really, where that necessity comes from, that logical necessity, you might think it's got a lot more to do with the concepts of and or and if then and if and only if and not. Okay, so what those concepts mean or what their nature is, that's got an awful lot to do with where the necessity baked into logic comes from. Okay, so if you think of concepts as part of the world, then yeah, it represents bits of the world, but it's not really representing the structure of the world as a whole. It's got a lot more to do with representing our logical concepts. So I think I want to conclude that, yeah, really logic doesn't represent the structure of the world, the metaphysical structure of the world, or the physical structure of the world. It's got a lot more to do with representing the structure, the normative structure of our concepts, and particularly of the concepts of those logical terms, and or not, and so on. Having said that, it doesn't mean that logic's got nothing to do with the world, right? Because after all, logic tells us that if this stuff about the world is true, then this stuff about the world is true. Okay, so logic extends our knowledge of the world. It helps our theorizing about the world. But I'm going to say it doesn't directly represent the structure. If you want to go a little bit deeper into the way that logical structure works in a logical language, go and take a look at this video up here. Thank you so much, Olga, for asking your question. I hope I've answered it at least a little bit. Thank you so much to all my Ko-Fi supporters for making this content possible. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you back here.
Wait, I don't know if it's Ko-Fi or coffee. I've been pronouncing it coffee. Is it Ko-Fi? Whatever. Doesn't matter. Stupid monkey philosophy. And why is my thing not working? I'm just gonna assume that it's on, and I probably just made a loud boom in your ears. I'm sorry. Okay. Can you hear me now? Good. That was Attic Philosophy. We are now subscribed to Attic Philosophy. This is Stupid Monkey Philosophy, an appendage of the Trusty 8 podcast, where I am going next for the Trusty 8 podcast. Logic, help me, Logic. Just because I'm a jackass, I'm gonna leave. Oh wait, no, it's not this one. Can I do it? Yeah, we can do it. We have time. We have 2 minutes. 2-minute warning. Ah, fuck it. You know what? I'm not gonna do it. I changed my mind right here on the spot. You saw it here first. Stupid Monkey Philosophy signing out. Be well. Be trusty. Yeah, it's alright to be a stupid monkey sometimes. Alright. See you in a minute. Or 2.